Hello, everyone. I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media and the Cyber Risk Alliance. Today, I'll be conducting a roundtable session with three esteemed winners of the 2023 SC Media Awards. We'll be talking about some of cybersecurity's key trends in 2023, including developments in identity and application security, including authentication as well. No doubt this conversation will go in all sorts of interesting directions. So with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce our winners. We have as our panelist members, Josh Signa, Enterprise Solutions Architect at Yubico, winner of the SC Award for Best Authentication Technology. We also have Brian McHenry, Vice President of Product Management for Web Applications and API Security at F5, which is a double winner. It wins for Best Web Application Solution and Best Marketing Campaign. And last but not least, we have Fran Roche, CEO at ForgeRock, which takes home the SC Award for Best Identity Management Solution. Congratulations to all three of you and your organizations. Really happy to have all of you here. And we've got plenty to talk about, so let's jump into it. We'll start a little broad and then hone in a little bit later on some more specific subject matter. Let's begin with the state of the cybersecurity industry today. I want to know what you think right now have been some of the biggest trends or headlines that are top of mind for you in 2023. What interesting turns has the industry taken this year? What's been most on your radar?
Well, I'm happy to jump in first, if that's all right. Great. I think, one of the things that we've seen is, I think we've always known that, compromised credentials lead to a lot of security breaches and problems. That's always something we've known. And I think a lot of companies have spent a lot of time trying to secure the workforce, the employees, and try to train them on phishing attacks so they don't give away their credentials, all of those things. But what change we've seen this year is actually a big increase in the malicious actors attacking supply chain and contractors who are, you don't spend as much time training and managing them. So actually 52% of all of these breaches were related to compromised credentials of vendors and contractors and not your employees. So you have to really think much more broadly than we have in the past.
Yeah, Fran, if I can follow up on that, one of the things that we really keep an eye on are documents and standards and recommendations coming out of organizations like CISA and NIST, and we definitely see that type of trend where NIST is recommending not only strengthening your internal processes, but also making sure that you include supply chain. And in order to fulfill those new NIST guidelines, you're going to need to start looking at your supply chain and kind of forcing those third-party folks to do better as well.
Yeah, it only takes one compromised credential for the malicious actor to get in, spread out, expand, ransomware, whatever it is. And we spend so much time on our own employees. We got to start looking at these vendors and contractors who don't care as much about our companies as we do. We want to make sure we lock them down as well.
Absolutely. Brian, interestingly, from a supply chain perspective, there's a web application security aspect to this too, because there's a lot of organizations that use various code that's borrowed from other sources, could be open source code or libraries, things which could have potentially vulnerabilities involved that you need to be aware of, threats in the supply chain as well. And I imagine there's been an increased focus in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think there's two supply chain elements that come immediately to mind when we think about web application and API security. One is what you mentioned. There's components of the web application or API stack, whether it's the web server or the code framework or what have you, that come with it. CVEs, the vulnerability announcements come with a regularity that every one of our enterprise customers at F5 come to us and say, what can you do to help me protect myself from being exploited? And oh, by the way, are you F5 yourself vulnerable to any of these things? So there's a lot of regulatory things that come with that. There's also the notion of, when it comes to a web application, the notion of microservices. So you think of one web application, but it's actually, in many cases, when you load a page, actually in almost every case, when you load a website in your browser, it's actually composing that experience from API calls to dozens, if not hundreds of different APIs. And, if you go to, Google.com or you go to Amazon.com, it's not all from Amazon or all from Google that's being loaded. It's being loaded from lots of third parties. So there's a supply chain of APIs as well that you need to ensure is being secured. There's also a supply chain when it comes to JavaScript. So all the JavaScript components you use to make a web application, not all those JavaScript components are necessarily yours. And sometimes some get loaded from an API call. And that's at the heart of like mage cart style attacks that we've seen in the past couple of years. And so supply chain really has a lot of different implications when it comes to security. And I think almost every discipline of security, no matter what area you're in, it all starts with a good inventory of what you have.
Yeah, very interesting, Brian. Is there a particular news-making incident from 2023 that you feel best encapsulates a snapshot of what the cybersecurity industry has looked like this past year, whether it is a greater focus on supply chain security because of the threats that are developed there? It could be another completely different area that we haven't talked about yet. What springs to mind?
Well, again, I don't think any one of these panels would be complete without talking about AI and Gen AI and all of that disruption. And, our customers, and at ForgeRock, we really support some, really large enterprise, global banks, global e-commerce and media companies. And they're really seeing the attacks get that much more sophisticated as cyber criminals are leveraging these large language models. Deep fakes and phishing and impersonation attacks have gotten much more effective in tricking people to give up valuable information. We're also seeing actually some of these AI tools being able to guess your next password before you do. So you're even asked to change it. They know you well enough that they know what you're changing your password to. So it really is, I think, fundamentally reducing trust on the internet, because you can no longer trust what you see. You can no longer trust people's credentials. And I think, this AI has made that so much harder for companies to protect. Now, I also think there's a positive side of that, because I think companies can then use AI right back, kind of fight fire with fire, to be able to say, hey, look at, the legacy ways we trusted, right? Maybe an old username and password don't work anymore, but how can we collect signals of user and device behavior to more accurately recognize the legitimate user and give them, frictionless access while blocking malicious actors? So I think AI is really shaking things up on both making the attacks more effective, but also giving us new tools and how we protect the enterprise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Josh, any thoughts on that? If we carry on the AI discussion about as AI gets better at mimicking human behavior, how can users, whether they're employees or consumers, fight back by, being able to still genuinely authenticate itself and distinguish themselves between a genuine authentication and a bot-fueled fake
Sure.
authentication?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the most recent anecdotes that I've read that really warmed the cockles of my heart was a phishing campaign we found out about, where the initial phishing response was, we're support, we need you to go unenroll your FIDO device, because we know that strong PKI-based authentication can protect against those types of attacks, and that's what the attackers need to overcome. With the work that the FIDO Alliance has done to roll out passkeys, really positioning them as a strong way for consumers to start using and leveraging that strong PKI, authentication, I think that is a really good step forward. with the prevalence of work from home, with the prevalence of BYOD, you can no longer trust the devices that people are logging in from. And being able to secure non-related accounts on those devices really will help the overall footprint and the overall goal of securing the internet.
Yeah. And Brian, again, in the AI discussion, there is also a application security angle on this as well. AI is a tool that can certainly be beneficial to developers to help them code more quickly and increase their productivity, but it could also potentially misuse of AI can introduce mistakes, possible bugs into the code, which creates new application security challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I'm most excited about when it comes to application API security and AI is the fact that I've been working in this space for about 15 years, and the one universal theme, no matter which solution, what kind of technology you're using in application security, is that they're all very difficult to operate at any kind of scale. Compared to, say, network security, where we all understand the 5-tuple ACL, allow and deny lists, and so forth, that's very easy comparatively to have like one size fits all or one size fits most type of rules. Things are pretty, binary in that way. When it comes to application security, there's a lot of nuance, right? There's different styles of application, different coding languages, different stacks, as we mentioned earlier. That means that every application needs a different type of security, a different policy. AI and ML are something that F5 and other companies are using to ease the creation of application security policy and help to profile the application, understand what good looks like, so that you can have application layer security in front of all of your applications and APIs, not just the precious few that you happen to have the engineers to devote to it. I think in the near future, when it comes to Gen AI, I think, as we know, there's a cybersecurity skills shortage out there, and it's hard to staff those teams. Generative AI, I think, has the potential to provide like virtual SOC and virtual threat analysis type functions to help assist those less staffed teams find the key threats, find the key vulnerabilities, and provide actual remediation guidance. So really looking forward to that development with Gen AI on the good guy side. It's not all bad news.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, since we've hit about the halfway point of our talk, I want to now have the opportunity to ask each of you individually a question about your area of specialty, specifically honing in on some of the subject matter that your respective companies won their SE awards for. So for start, I'm going to start with you, Josh, and talk a little bit about just some of the latest trends in authentication. I mean, for me, what's top of mind is that we just recently or earlier in the summer got a lot of big announcements from some tech giants around the emergence of passkeys, and we're certainly expecting more widespread adoption of that. And in doing so, that announcement also served to highlight and remind folks about the work that you've also done in the area of hardware keys, actual handheld devices that users can also employ for an extra layer of security as well in certain circumstances. So I'm wondering if you if you found that this whole passkey, the emergence of that over the last few months has really reignited a lot of conversation around these various different forms of passwordless authentication.
Most definitely. The conversation has been ongoing, and a lot of it has been educational in nature. This seems like a new technology, passkeys. It's really not. It's just a new application of the existing FIDO2 standard. The fact that some of the big names in the space, Apple and Google and Microsoft, have really embraced this and built this in at a fundamental level means that we can start, as I mentioned earlier, pushing this on consumers to give consumers better options to protect themselves. In this space, high tide raises all boats, and any type of mass adoption of this technology really only furthers the overall goals of the cybersecurity industry. Make it easy, make it reliable, make it secure, and protect people.
Yeah, I would just love to add what Josh said, because I think he's got it right. I think we're at an inflection point, and when it comes to passwordless, and I actually worked before, many years ago, I worked for VeriSign and did a lot of authentication PKI. And back then, 2000s, we always said, oh, it's the year of PKI. And it never really took off the way we thought it would. But this fundamental concept of passkeys, again, Josh says, not new, but it's really here now. And we really see banks moving forward, big retailers moving forward with a passwordless experience. And there's so many security benefits we know of eliminating the password, right? Consumers use the same one, they share it, it's already free on the internet, and they don't do anything about it, all right? But there's also, and this can help, there's also so much convenience, right? Mm-hmm. People are trying to build loyalty with their customer base, make it easier to enroll. So I think passwordless is here now for both consumers and employees. Passkeys are a big part of it. Device authentication is a big part of it. And we see some exciting things even past passwordless to get into identity wallets. So you not only don't have to log on, you only have one identity instead of 50 or 100 or 300. So it's a really exciting time in both identity and authentication.
Yeah. The other thing in this space that I'm really excited to see is we finally have a North Star to move forward to on quantum resistant authentication. And Google just a couple weeks ago released an update to their OpenSK package that includes the dilithium protocols. So we can actually start looking at and testing out these quantum resistant algorithms to make sure that we are future-proofing this process. So as far as things on the horizon that we're really keeping an eye on, that's where it's at.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, certainly worthy of tracking the progress on that. Fran, over to you. I want to also ask you a little bit about your area of identity and access management. It's now really become the central core tenet behind Zero Trust. Zero Trust obviously is a concept that at this point has graduated from buzzword from a couple of years ago. All right, is it going to stick? It seems like it's stuck, and it does seem like IAM now has become, like I said, the core premise behind it. So in late 2023, where are things shifting in terms of IAM priorities, in terms of organizations really seriously trying to mature their Zero Trust models?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, in our industry, we love buzzwords, and somebody creates it, we all rally around it. And certainly Zero Trust has been around for a long time. It's still something that large enterprises are wrestling with. They don't move as fast as, an article that gets published. And, identity is a new perimeter. We're talking about that for a long time. And these things, I think, are still happening. And I think, but we also think at ForgeRock that Zero Trust is really, it's not one product. It's not one control point. You have to have identity. You have to have endpoint. You have to have network. And they all contribute to an overall Zero Trust posture. But identity certainly has a big role to play. And what we're doing at ForgeRock is being able to give our customers much more power and intelligence to be able to recognize a legitimate employee or customer at any point of their journey, and keep them moving on through that journey, and also be able to block. So think about a couple of different control points. When you're registering a new customer, a new employee, if you can filter out potential malicious actors at that point by using cool identity proofing approaches, that helps. But you're going to get some people get past that, right? So then you do it at authentication. Okay, looks like weird behavior. Maybe they get past authentication. You're constantly looking at then application access. And what Zero Trust is about, every step along that way, doing a risk analysis. and saying, does this still look like the legitimate user? Not just because they have a static username and password. Are they behaving the same? Their device looks similar. How can we use AI to collect a lot of different data points on their device and on their behavior to develop a risk score, and then give our customers the power to say, yes, this is like a really positive person, let them through. Or this looks like malicious, stepped up authentication. But it's this constant intelligence that I think companies demand in their identity solutions.
Yeah, very interesting there, Fran. And Brian, I want to also make sure that I have some time for you and talk a little bit about API security. Now, every innovation in some way improves our lives, but can also sometimes introduce new problems as well in terms of security. And so, we have all of these things like, increased adoption of cloud-based services and microservices architectures and things like that, designed to basically make our jobs and lives easier. But as these APIs grow exponentially in number across all these different web and mobile app ecosystems, businesses become challenged in terms of having the visibility, the governance, the standardization needed to protect their organizations from various code vulnerabilities. And so this API sprawl seems to be something that everybody's trying to wrestle with, and certainly something that has increasingly become a challenge, I would say, introducing a lot of complexities in 2023. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. API sprawl is a problem, and to put some numbers to this, we did a study at F5, our office of the CTO, roughly 200 million APIs available on the open internet today. We project that based on a number of different trends to grow to approximately 2 billion by the end of the decade, by 2030. So that's an idea of how fast this is growing. And when things are moving this fast, you can almost be sure of a few things. They're not being well documented. They're possibly being published without security, and they are probably very different, each and every one, because there are different development teams developing them with different tools, et cetera. So that contributes to the complexity problem that I mentioned earlier. But also with, the one core tenet of security that I mentioned earlier, which is a good inventory, whether it's a good inventory of hardware assets or software assets, or even an inventory of your vulnerabilities. We also need an inventory of APIs. And so there's been an explosion in the API security space around the notion of discovery. And with where we look at API security and good practices is there's sort of three phases. There's monitor, discover, and then mitigate or enforce. And what you're looking for when you're trying to develop a good API security program is really something that can find a way either inline or out of band, begin monitoring your API traffic, start to profile it, and then once it's profiling, start to discover things that maybe are undocumented, something that can maybe document the schema for you, can discover things like the authentication protocols that are in use or maybe not in use. As my colleagues Fran and Josh rightfully mentioned, being able to discover that authentication, enforce it, or discover a lack of authentication and insert it, very important capabilities, and being able to close that loop rather rapidly through some sort of mitigation or enforcement, whether it's with an inline solution or by integrating with third parties. And that's something that we at F5 have long been known for, is sitting in line with traffic, and we've really augmented that with our distributed cloud platform, which is is powered on the back end by a very sophisticated AI and machine learning complex, pardon me, and being able to sit in line with all the traffic, profile it, discover all the aspects of the traffic in a very granular fashion, but also present it in a way that's easy to consume for the operator, and give guided recommendations on how to best enforce good behavior on those APIs. And I really don't think there's any other way to keep pace with something that's going to grow from 200 million to 2 billion in the next few years, other than to make use of AI and machine learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate your perspectives on that. we actually covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time, which I really appreciate. We've been able to really take a look at what the cybersecurity space looks like in the year 2023, specifically around the areas of authentication, identity management, and application and AI security. And so thank you for really making this a very fascinating and well-informed discussion today. I think there are a lot of nuggets out there for those listening that'll be useful to them. So thank you to the three members of our roundtable. That is once again Josh Signa from Yubico, Brian McHenry from F5, and Fran Roche from ForgeRock. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Congratulations to you, to your companies. This has been Bradley Barth reminding you that you can find a full list of our SC Awards winners at scmagazine.com. In the meantime, thanks for watching.